So, what have I been up to the last few days? Well, the quick answer is endless cell grinding. The Alpha Branch update has now finally metamorphosized into the Foundry update, which means that I finally get to keep all the upgrades that I invest into after every single boss now. Ah, yes, the Foundry update. There's not really too much that's been, different in this particular update. It's mostly just, switching up some of the mutations into being blueprints now and adding a couple new ones. Mostly related to, using a flask. Flasks are half as effective, but they do more, but you will get a damage buff with it, or you get healing over time, but you also get, a damage bonus. Oh yeah, and you might notice that, yes, I am doing this post-commentary. Doing 3 boss cells active run, the hardest the game can possibly get, is, well, as you would kind of expect, a little tough. I'm still kind of adjusting to the difficulty a little bit. Certainly a lot better than that one stream I did where I called it, ultra hard mode? Nah, it's not nearly as bad once you get a few upgrades into your various weapons, but it's still quite difficult. So, leave the commentary for later, focus on the gameplay, in the moment, you could say. The only other mutation that I think is really notable, really interesting to see is the one where is alienation, which makes curses get cleared twice as fast. Each kill is worth 2 curse points relieved, as well as healing you 75% when you take the curse. I like that one a lot, and I think it's really useful for the particular cell grinding route, which that's what this run is going to be. Just simple. Hey, no holds barred, just grind out as many cells as possible before the end. And you do get quite a few curse chests on the way that I'm going, so it's actually pretty good for healing health. But there's also another mutation, not as amazing, but you get, food is twice as effective and you get a little buff with it, which I think is, if you're not going this route, probably the more effective one to take if you're trying to grind out all 3 cells. So anyway, that's that out of the way. What is the actual plan for these runs? Well, I think that while survival was the king for a while during the Brutal update, the Foundry update here, at least for me, is all about taking the tactics. One of the first things that I upgraded was a bunch of the turrets. Like I said in the last video, I really underestimated just how good turrets were, and I think that it's just they are my current weapon of choice more than anything else. You get the cooldown reduction, you get a bunch of tactics right off the bat, which you might notice that I have 9 tactics right now. That is the power of upgrading things. Oh, when you upgrade stuff, it is no just minor 5%, 10% increase in damage like it was way back in the day. No. It is a very, very effective increase. Up to, I think, 2 times the amount of damage increase per, item level. Where you would normally get, plus 100%, you're getting, plus 200%. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere around that. Fiery weapons are also very useful because a lot of the turrets will get plus 100% on burning targets. I think usually I've been going more often with pyrotechnics than anything else because you get the great constant damage. A lot of turrets also have deployed upon deployment get oil on everything, so you get the bonus damage from that. And it does deal fire damage, so you get that plus 100% burning on there too. But yeah, a lot of extra damage, and then you also get plus 2 relevant stats at the final level. So it's for example, both the turrets I have right now, the ceiling turret and the standard turret, are both tactics only, so I get plus 2 tactics for just carrying around both of those. It's a really substantial increase, especially early in the game. Even if you have something that's kind of off-branded, for example, the Firebrands there, you have the chance of getting plus 2 brutality, plus 2 tactics, or 1 brutality, 1 tactics whenever you pick one of those up. And it's even if you get something that's not the exact stat you want, it's also a huge increase in health just picking it up compared to anything else. So yeah, plus 100% on burning targets, grab pyrotechnics. I also like electric whip for taking out flying enemies, is pretty effective. Hokuto's bow with some of the improvements it has, where the mark gets spread to all nearby enemies when you kill an enemy that's marked. With the just like how densely packed these enemies are. I mean, look at the crazy amount of enemies in here. The Hokuto's bow actually becomes very good. It's a very far cry from when I originally played the game and was like, I don't know about that. Speaking of pyrotechnics, it's right there. So yeah, it's a lot of ranged weaponry and a lot of sort of like passive weaponry in the form of turrets there. And that's the sort of thing that even when you can't refill your health flask, and that's obviously the most difficult part of doing these runs, because enemies still do a ton of damage, even at like, fully leveled up, everything. Even at like, fully leveled up weapons, kind of spreading out stats so you get the maximum. For example, right there, grabbing survival for plus 50% health. It's like even if you have like the maximum amount of health, enemies will still kill you in like 1 or 2 hits, and it's not as easy to be able to heal that up. I think in this run, what I eventually took is the... Oh, yes. The 2-cell door in this area always leads to another one of those cell tanks there. Oh, yeah, I ended up taking the plus increase to the doubly effective food plus damage buff one instead of alienation for the curse healing, even though I probably should have. Just because I think that one's the more safe option, because then you don't really need to take curses. And with the amount of stats that you're getting from the various items you're picking up, you're generally not hurting for stats at any point in time when you're doing runs in this update. At least that's kind of how I feel. I don't know. You can always use more stats too. But anyway, yeah, one of the things I've noticed with the cell doors, where you need to have like 1, 2, 3 boss cells active to be able to get in them, is that they are all the same thing. And that this one especially is valuable because you have the time that going through this route, it's especially effective because you get that extra cell tank in the 2-cell door here, as well as the time door ones. The entire reason why I'm actually going through, well, the basic route here is, start in the prison cells, then go to the promenade, because you get 2 cell tanks there. And a lot of the enemies are pretty easy to kill. For example, the bat there takes like 1 hit to take down. If you have something like an electric whip, you can just spam the hell out of that and get a ton of cells just killing enemies that way. Just killing like enemies that take no hits. And very trivially too. And then usually where I go after that, or well, the only place I go after that is the ossuary, because you also get a huge cell tank in the time door of that area, as well as pretty decent amount of enemies that are not like super difficult. And I found that like you get pretty much the same amount of cells regardless of like what route you take. Oh yes, and then after I beat the incomplete one, when I'm grinding on my own, usually what I do is I just reset the game from there, because hey, the easier parts of the game are easier, and the second half of the game rewards pretty much the same amount of cells and takes pretty much the same amount of time to go through. So, why not just go replay up the incomplete one again? Obviously, the Forge only appears after bosses anyway, so it's like, that's the best time to do it. It's right after you spend all of your cells and right before you're about to go through the harder area of the game. So, So yeah, you get 2 time doors, and well, 3 time doors with the incomplete one. Oh yeah, and usually you want to leave this area at about 6 minutes in, just because that way absolutely you're going to make the time door. Yeah, going through the promenade, going through ossuary, going to the incomplete one, that gets you 3 time doors, all of which have cells behind them of increasing amounts as you go on. The promenade also has an extra cell tank, and there's a lot of enemies in every single one of them, and none of them are like so difficult that you feel like you're taking a gamble going through. I'd say the most difficult enemies in this area, at least going through this route, is dealing with, well, one, the kamikaze bats, but that's most areas when you have 3 cells active. They love to put those characters in every single crook and nanny of the entire game. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Yeah, there's the food increase one. level that up a little bit. Not that I really use the damage buff on it a whole lot, but you know. But like, compare that to going through something like the sewers where you have, which as far as I can tell, you get pretty much the same amount of cells going through it. Okay, well, aside from that one hit there, it's usually a lot safer as long as you're kind of careful here. Pyrotechnics has good distance on it, so you don't really need to, you know, worry too much about being in the fray if you play it right. But yeah, Prison Depths is... I have not seen, like, much of a difference as far as, like, the amount of cells you gained. I think they... You know, like, the 25 to 30 cells that you get in the time door of the ossuary is way more worthwhile than spending, like, an extra 5 minutes or so going through the Prison Depths. It's also less, you know, mechanical spiders to deal with, and all that sort of stuff. And then similarly, like, going through the sewers carries the risk of, like, scorpions popping up everywhere, and if they hit you, they poison you for a lot of damage. Ugly worms always throwing down bombs every single time they die, so you have to kind of avoid that or grab, like, a wave of denial. A denial wave, which is the right name of that. Or like a shovel or something to make sure that you're not getting hit by those, or you just gotta wait. And it's like, compare that to this, where it's just like, yeah, you gotta deal with trackers, yeah, you gotta deal with slashers and spinners, which, they're all, I hate slashers and spinners so much. But you know what? When you're going like a full-on range build like this, they're way, way easier to deal with. Although I finally kind of understand what, like, the purpose of the spinner is. I never really thought of that enemy as being very difficult to deal with, as long as you kind of had the rolling down. It's when they're spinning, they will not like reflect, but like deflect every single projectile you throw at them. So if you have like a ranged build, or if you're using like turrets, and you let them kind of get an attack off, you will have to wait for them to, you know, stop doing their attack before you can actually hurt them. And that's like, because like every single time prior to this, I would usually go sword and board, like shield and some sort of melee weapon. Yeah, I might as well go survival, because I do have a survival mutation on right now. Like, yeah, prior to this, I would always go for that, because, like, you know, I always thought of turrets and like ranged weapons as being too slow. But when you gotta be very, very careful, I think they're pretty effective. And I think you'll notice that, like, kind of as I go through the run here, that they're especially effective. Well, like I said, some of the modifiers they have can be way more effective than I kind of gave them credit for. Especially, like, plus 100% on a burning target, which, when you combine it with this, is super great. Or, like, plus 100% on a poison target, if you have, like, projectiles explode into poison. There's a ton of synergies that I honestly think may do a little too much damage, and Motion Twin may be fixing in the future. God, I hate those shockers. They're the worst. I think I am getting killed more by shockers than like anything else in a lot of these, in a lot of the more recent updates here. So maybe they are, maybe I will bump them up to worst at this point. I guess I'll run the numbers later. One of the nice things is that one of the cell doors, I think it's the one cell door, the door that only requires one cell to go into, is a food shop. So that if you take this particular mutation, the one that gives you twice as effective food healing, you can go and find that and get fully healed, like, you know, guaranteed, which is really nice. But yeah, I was saying the plus 100% on burning, which the thing is, when you upgrade weapons, you get extra modifiers. I mean, what it does is it actually says in the forge, like, well, that could have easily been the end of the run right there. I managed it okay, though. You know, like, I think in the forge it actually says something along the lines of a bonus to the weapon, or whatever, like +4 levels or something like that, which means that I think, like, by the end of the game you're getting like 4 modifiers on every single one of your Ah, here you go, the one cell door. That's exactly what I was talking about. And that one normally heals 50%, but with ×2 healing, you get a 100% full heal out of it. But yeah, by the end of the game, you get like 4 modifiers on a fully upgraded like item, whether it's melee or a skill or a shield or anything like that. And when you have that many modifiers on something, at least one of them is guaranteed to be like a plus 100 on X type modifier. And that essentially means that you are that with the right setup, like if you're planning to get something like pyrotechnics or flame torrent like I have, or firebrands or whatever, and especially with the ability to re-roll stuff and like choose merchandise category, you're almost essentially guaranteed to get 2 to 4 times damage if you got the right setup on every single one of the turrets, which leads to you doing just unreal damage, especially against like some of the later enemies in the final boss. Of course, they can all kill you in like 1 or 2 hits, but that's you know, it just makes me kind of feel like when you get to like this level of the game, like this sort of difficulty, that it might be going a little too harsh in some ways, where it's what I would call like a Gradius difficulty. By the way, did you see how quickly I killed that spinner? Well, take a guess what's going to happen to most of the bosses, well, to the bosses that I fight in this run. Yep. Those, like I said, getting that plus 100%, or even like if you get like plus 100% on poisoned and burning and figure out like some way to do it. For example, enemies are poisoned, enemies release poison clouds when they die. You're doing like up to 4 times damage. And that's something that's firing constantly on an enemy. And if you have only a single target, you can do the math. But like, yeah, I think that some of the difficulty levels here, I think, with like the harshness of not being able to heal, at least not being able to heal as much as you would if you had full access to the healing fountains. Yeah, not worth it. As well as the fact that enemies just do tons and tons of damage and are so densely packed and everything, it feels like you're kind of planning that like if somebody plays the game really well, then they're going to have absolutely no problem with this, because you know they're going to be able to upgrade all their stuff, they're going to be able to get like all the modifiers down, all the correct synergies to be able to just blow through the game. But if you get hit like 2 times, you're dead. A lot like Gradius, where it's like you can get all the upgrades you want, the game will be a cakewalk until you get killed once, and then you'll lose everything, but you're in like the last level of the game, and it becomes just extremely difficult unless you are some sort of godlike player of this. So I think that although I am totally down with like having the upgrade system, you know, come back in some way, even though, hey, what happened to all the upgrades I did, you know, prior to this? I know they're still in the game. I had everything upgraded. Come on, Motion Twin. Where's all the progress I already... Okay, fine then. Guess I'm not going to get that back, am I? Okay, anyway. But like, yeah, I really like the mutations. I like all this and that in the new update here. I still think health is kind of questionable because, yeah, it encourages you to kind of spread out your stats, but it's still kind of a weird sort of a mishmash of stats that you tend to get, and it's still, I mean, there's like the stat system is not perfect, and I think that the Foundry might be a little too powerful, but like the only really big issue I'd say, oh hey, incomplete one fight, I wonder how this is gonna go. Like the incomplete one basically turns into like a fighting game character on max difficulty at like this level, where it's just like, well, you're fine until he actually gets close to you, and then he starts parrying all of your attacks perfectly, reading your inputs, and then just destroying you. Then you get on the other side of him and he's trivial. But yeah, the biggest problem that I have with this update, I think, is that like I feel like there's too much of a I feel like the difficulty still needs a lot of, like, you know, changes up, and I still feel like the difficulty still needs to be changed up quite a bit in the game, because did I totally forget to go in the time door? Wait a second, I forgot to go in the time door. What the hell? What am I doing? I opened it up and everything. What? Oh, God, what was... And the thing is, I wasn't even doing commentary at that time. I got no excuse. Well, crap. That would have been like an extra 30 cells in this run. I think what I was going to do was go to the Foundry first, or... Oh, God, I don't... What the hell was I even thinking? Well, anyway, yes, difficulty. I think the difficulty still needs to be tuned a little bit, because it feels a little too, yeah, Gradius difficulty, too much like perfect play makes the game easy, but even the slightest, you know, error can, like, totally end your run. Which, I mean, has always been the case in this game. Like, Dead Cells is a game that can turn on a dime. Yeah, I'm not giving up the stuff I currently have. I currently have a really nice necklace, especially that 75% reduction. Yeah, Cursed Sword. I think the Cursed Sword is the perfect, like, metaphor for, like, how the difficulty goes right now. It's great until you get hit. Then if you get hit once, then you lose all the stuff. Although at least, like, upgrades are all permanent. Although, like I said, I do think that, like, giving you 2 extra stats makes it a little, like, too overpowered at the beginning. Maybe I think, like, make it... You know, I'm thinking about this right now. Maybe if you, like, say, instead of weapons and items getting more modifiers as they get leveled up, maybe eventually they just start getting +2 stats instead. And then it's like, well, that might actually be how it works right now that I'm thinking about it. But it's like, just so you don't have, like, a guaranteed +100% on burning, making things like some of these skills a little too powerful in some ways. I mean, you don't even need to be in melee range to be able to hit enemies with this stuff. You don't even need to be near these enemies. I could be just, like, sitting over in a corner or something. Especially with something like the ceiling turret, which I've touted a lot here as being just amazing, because you can be so far away from it, and it's invincible, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know, like I said, I hesitate to say that it's overpowered, but at some points in time, it kind of feels like it. I don't know. So anyway, the big deal with the... Yeah, I think that's going to be a little bit more effective than that. But yeah, I think, like, the big deal with like going through the Slumbering Sanctuary here is especially, like, or similarly going through, like, the Fog Fjord, is that there's a lot of projectiles, and those are the things that really kind of, I think, more than anything else, like I said, I get hit by shockers a lot, and I think I get hit by these orb casters a lot. And obviously golems if you're not, you know, on your dodging A game, because, boy, those... Actually, speaking of which, golems are very nicely countered by having a turret, because they will punch the turret instead of punching you, which is a good way to kind of, like, have a little bit of a meat shield in between you and them, which is really all you need if you have a decently powerful build. And then, yeah, if you're going through, like, the Fog Fjord, you have the pirate captains shooting cannonballs at you all the time, which are just... I mean, they are very predictable, but I kind of feel like when you're in the heat of the moment, they become a lot more difficult to deal with, because you're just like, oh, I gotta get away from it. Oh, I gotta get away from it. Oh, no, it's coming back at me. Oh, I exploded and I died. Yeah, as long as you're kind of... Golems are great if you have them by themselves. If they're, like, with... You know, I say that about, like, every single enemy, but I feel like it's especially true here. That's, like, golems, if they have, like, even a second enemy near them, it's, like, a death sentence. Those dudes are tough. But thankfully I got my little standard turret there to at least tank one hit from them if I need to. I think 3-cell door is just another curse chest? Oh no, it's a shop. You know, I think that of the various cell doors in the game, like my favorite one is the... Oh, nice, pyrotechnics upgrade. I still cannot believe that Fire Torrent has that, like, stupid... It's got to be a placeholder, because that looks way too dumb to be something that would be final. Well, yeah, my favorite cell door, I think, is the one cell door in the... And there you go, plus 100%. The one cell door in the ramparts, which will allow you to go fight the Watcher instead of fighting the incomplete one after the ramparts. That's the sort of thing that I would like to see come up in the future. Honestly, I would like to see it even right now. If they wanted to say, like, you know, the 3-cell door in, I don't know, like the clock tower or something like that will lead all the way back to, like, the promenade. You know, like, give you kind of a second loop. Or just, like, lead over to the sepulcher or something like that. I want to see, like, more mixing up of, like, the biomes. Like, if you choose ultra hard difficulty, you know, all 3 boss cells active, you can take some really weird routes in the game. And I mean, it's already been kind of opened up with the ability to fight the Watcher in the ramparts. Which I think that as I am playing the game more, I'm starting to prefer the Watcher over the incomplete one. Because the Watcher you can fight at least decently quickly, whereas the incomplete one constantly is yelling and putting up his shield and just walking towards you. And then you nearly die just because he's kind of has you in a corner like that, well, like what happened in this run. Yeah, the second little cell container is right up there, which is what I was looking at. I mean, that's another reason why I kind of prefer the Slumbering Sanctuary versus the Fog Fjord, because you get the like little cell containers in here. And also the Slumbering Sanctuary is a pretty small area. It just is pretty much like 2 areas sort of packed in one. But by the time you activate that second area, you already have all the teleporters active, so it's generally not too difficult to go around. So I think that, yeah, I want to see more like mixing up of biomes, or at the very least, like, there is already like the 4-cell biome. There is already a 4-cell door in the graveyard right now. Who knows? Maybe that will finally lead to the repository of the architects now that the little area at the end of the graveyard clearly doesn't. In fact, I'm thinking about that right now. That is almost assuredly what it leads to. Or not. I could easily be wrong. I don't know. Pyrotechnics, maybe not the best thing to deal with the kamikaze bats, but it worked out fine there. And I have been going to the clock tower a lot. I mean, it is the new area. But, since I've been doing it so much, hit up the sepulcher instead. At least that's the idea that I was going with, but when that was the idea I had when I was playing the game at the time. Of course, I also had the idea of totally missing that time door in the right after the incomplete one fight. So who knows what I was thinking, really. You know, really, I probably could have switched up some of my mutations at this point, because this is the point where I would say that it starts to become like, you know, okay, you can start blowing some of your potion charges. Like right now, I've kind of been like overly careful, overly cautious about it. I mean, like I said, usually I don't even bother with that because, like, I mean, I've done more than a few, like, 3-cell runs going through to the assassin already. But like I said, usually what I do is I will just restart at the incomplete one fight, because you don't... Like, I had about 300 cells by the time I got to the incomplete one. And I think that... Hey, nice. I had about like 300 cells by the time I got to the incomplete one. I don't think I get much over like 600 after going through here. Which I decided not to use the Foundry after the incomplete one, because I'm like, you know, I kind of want to show off the total amount of cells rather than forcing people to even do like any math. And, you know, why not? I mean, this may technically not be a challenge run, but you can add in like a little bit of tension with that, even though this is post commentary, and obviously I would not put up a video that is incomplete. Well, except for that one time that I did, but the explosive lure run, but I finished that one. I finished it. It was cool. Yeah, the big new enemy that they added here was, for some reason, shield bearers. I guess the idea would be that they got like a little conga line of trackers there, and that would kind of prevent you from just hitting them with range attacks over and over. Obviously not as much of a deal with pyrotechnics, because although you might not get them with like the initial damage, the fire goes through that shield just fine. I mean, it's just a wooden shield. Oh, God. Oh, shockers. Like I was saying, this is about the time where you start to blow flask charges. And if all you're planning to do is go to like the incomplete one, then yeah, you blow a flask charge whenever you even feel like you're somewhat threatened by stuff. Because, you know, you don't need it past the incomplete one fight. But like here, I usually like to save it as much as possible. I mean, you do get like single flask charge, I think, after the boss you fight, whether it's the Watcher or incomplete one, and right before you fight the assassin. So like when I go into the clock room biome, that's when I'll get like a single extra flask charge. So it's like, even if you blow, and okay, here's a spoiler right now. Remember how I was saying that it's like bosses not too difficult when you have like some super ultra powerful turret setup? Well, you just watch. I mean, besides, I've also had like tons and tons and tons of practice with the assassin. So if I'm going all out, like, oh man, single hit, that's more than half of my health, and I have like, what is it? Well, I have like nearly 24. I have 24 tactics, which, wow. But I also have a decent amount of like the off stats there too. So you'd think that would kind of protect me a little bit more. Well, nope. And yeah, as I was saying, with the 24 tactics, you really don't need to take cursed chests at this point in the game. I think that's actually kind of like the idea behind the difficulty now that they have. Although they did add like hard modes with the boss cells and everything like that, ultimately I think what they did was they made it so that if you're not going, you know, full balls to the walls, all 3 cells, that the game is actually easier. Like the easy mode is not having all of the cells on, or like any of the cells on, really. Because I think they've just added like a ton more ways to get stats in the game and all that sort of stuff. So that if you don't want to play with a bunch of the boss cells on, I mean, you do have to have the boss cells on to, you know, upgrade your items in the first place. But past like that initial point, I think the game has gotten easier and harder. Because 3 cells, I'd say, is definitely like harder than, well, it's more like a, you know, I said before, it's kind of more like a heaven or hell mode, where it's like you kill everything in nearly 1 hit, everything kills you in nearly 1 hit, so But like if you only have 2 cells on, I would say that's like maybe slightly more difficult than standard difficulty that we have known and loved from this game since time immemorial. But like if you have no cells on, it's actually easier. If you have all cells on, it's a little harder in some ways. Here's a good test of the setup I got right now. Yeah, pretty alright. That's a decent firebrands too. So I do think that this update kind of gives like the whole range of like what you would have wanted out of like difficulty selectors in this game. Maybe, I don't know. In some ways too, I'm also way too deep in this game to actually judge like what's difficult and what's not at this point. It's like, yeah, when you play like literally hundreds of hours of this game like I have, and have a YouTube channel largely dedicated to playing it, it's like, what's a hard game? What's like a hard version of this game anymore? I don't even know. That's where that 75% reduction on the projectiles comes in. So I don't think it's the best, but I do think that it does address some issues that people have had with this game in the past, without like compromising the difficulty too much. And really giving bonuses if you want to really pump up the difficulty. Or the jams. Sepulcher. It's not too much to say here, but it's like having like something that leaves fire on the ground, having something that will just do damage automatically. This is a great place for like a ceiling turret because there's no real big wide open area where the ceiling turret can't hit. Just anything that does mass damage I think is pretty good. Also, why do these things only give 10 cells? It's like they change it up so like the time doors are giving you like 30 cells at this part of the game. By the way, hit over 600. Hooray! And they changed it up so that like time doors are giving you over 30 cells. Why do I have to pay like most of the money that I've gathered to get 10 cells? I honestly don't know if it's a bug or just kind of like, well, now you're encouraged to use that alienation perk because there's a couple of those doors in this area. And it's not too difficult to get rid of, what, 10 curse that you would get from breaking down those doors? I don't know. As far as I can remember, I don't think the cell doors in these areas are anything really special. Like, for some reason, Promenade's the only one that gives you, like, the little cell container, which is, like, the one that I want to go for more than just about anything else. Whereas, like, everything else, a lot of curse chests. Which, you know, if I was having a hard time with the game, or if I was feeling especially ballsy, I would definitely be going for. I really don't think I'm getting hit frequently enough that it would be too... Ooh, that's a nice one. Yeah, standard turret's great, but not as great as that. You know, like, I'm not getting hit often enough that I feel like, oh, I couldn't possibly take, like, a... curse, you know, that would be impossible. I would just get killed. I just don't want... you know, it's... I think I said, like, at the start of the Brutality update when they changed it up so that, okay, then. Spikes still being surprisingly effective even against enemies. Yeah, I said during like the start of the Brutality update that it's like I'm kind of glad and kind of sad that they took out the... At the time, they had taken out the oh, that was easy. At the time, they had taken out the Scrolls of Power from coming out of the cursed chest, and I was just like, well, I'm kind of glad that I don't have to worry about being cursed anymore, but I also lose a bunch of stats. And then they put them right back in, and I'm like, okay. Now I got to. Full heal. Nice. Yeah, just doing a slight bit of cleanup here. If you ever wanted to see me do like a full clear of the island, I guess this game's taking place on an island. It's like this would be the sort of run that would be emblematic of what it would look like. I don't know. I've heard people like it. I mean, I've kind of I've talked about like Dark Souls like challenge runs. It's sort of like the inspiration for a lot of the videos that I've done before. And I know like Lobos Jr., I want to say, did like a clear Lordran run. But like, I don't know. I also kind of feel like, yeah, you're just killing a bunch of enemies, which, you know, fine. But unless I really have a reason, cells, obviously. I don't really I think it's just kind of like spinning your wheels as far as doing a run. Yeah, since I don't need that health increase one anymore. Yep. And oh yes, 1861 when you're a decent amount away from them. When you're a decent amount away from any enemy. Which is especially good because you can easily get that with turrets and, say, something like pyrotechnics. So, what is the assassin going to be like with this extremely overpowered build that I have? Let's take a look. Wow, what an amazingly difficult fight. I barely made it out of that one alive. Oh, well, here's where we get to the Foundry. Or the Foundry? The Forge? And I just sped up this part because it's boring. But you can kind of see that I have quite a few of the things unlocked, but not everything, which is why I wanted to do at least some kind of video here. Shouldn't be too much longer, but when I get everything unlocked, I think it's all the way back to doing challenge runs again and kind of having that resume. So I'll see you at that time.